All right, Freedom Phil here, live from the wasteland. And what's the topic today? You know, I see these cases where people take on legacy businesses like the family farm, commercial fishing boat, trucking business, electrician, plumbing business, whatever business. The family's like, well, hey, take over your family's business. You know, one of the problems with this is sometimes the business is doing good, but is it good enough to really float you over the next number of years? So how to prevent the inevitable disaster is actually to go out and do the 7 to 10 year thing of retirement by 30, you know, basically AKA retired in 7 to 10 years. And the reason I point this out is because I have seen so many cases where it just ends up being, you have people like family farms are a great example of this, where the business, people have a love for the land and the legacy, but there's one person, unless they really, really love farming, they end up being chained to something while the rest of the family members go off to do something. Now imagine for a second how much more you would love your business if you weren't worried about making the money. Like you actually just loved doing the farming. And if you had a good year, that's a good year you can put back more into your business. And if you had a bad year, it doesn't matter because you already did retirement by 30. You don't have to worry about the money. So where am I going with this? Freedom Phil, like, subscribe. Let's get into it and turn up the video speed. And why do I always say that? Because, dude, seriously, watch videos faster. I can't believe anybody watches things at least, it's got to be 1.75 at the very least. All right, let's get into it. People often would be like, well, how can you live off next to nothing? How do I do what I do? I'll give you the raw numbers. I live off as a wastelander, I live off 3,000 to 5,000 a year, which is basically nothing. We're talking, what? $30 a month for cell phone, $30 a month for insurance, maybe $10 to $20 a month for gas, and 15 for laundry. Add $100 for food, and then an extra $100 for maybe a little vodka and some used video games or whatever. Not really much. So we're talking $200 to $300 a month. So we're talking under, clearly under 5,000 a year, and then some extra money on the side just for whatever. If I can do that and you do that, basically you can go out and take your money, like you're making 80 to 100K and you're living off 5K. Like truck driving is one of the quickest ways out of poverty I ever saw, unless you decide to buy a truck. And there's a lot of guys I see that buy trucks and they really don't know what they're doing. They don't have a fucking clue how to run a business. And then a lot of them, the problem is what they'll do is when they're doing really good, they'll be like, well, mama need a new SUV. I want a Harley or a boat or some other stupid shit. And because of the way they're running their business, they're dependent off that business. And the same thing I've seen with farming. You have a good year and everything's okay. We did good that year. Well, you have a bad year and you're hoping you have enough left over from the last good year to be doing just fine. Now imagine for a second if you're living dirt cheap, retirement by 30, and you take your excess money from whatever job or trade you're doing, you got to live off next to nothing too. And you invest it. Now you're making 10% per 100,000. And if you're taking 80K a year and investing it, how many years does it take you to have more than enough money to where even at a paltry 10% per 100,000, we're talking, let's say you got, $500,000 invested. $500,000 invested equals 50 grand a year. Now I'm kind of an extremist the way I live. So let's just say you're living off 10 grand a year on average. And people say 10 grand, how can you live? Your house is already paid off. So you take an extra, you take 5-6 years, you invest into your retirement when you're young. So the money starts making you money, compound interest. And then there's tons of cheap houses all over the Midwest and all over the country. Now, let's just say with the family farm, the family business, the family whatever, you don't have to worry about getting the land so much because maybe the family already has a house there or something that you could purchase off them or whatever, however it goes. Maybe the grandparents own it and they keep it as an asset. So basically, the thing about it is that what ends up happening is that because you're invested and you're doing just fine, if you have a bad year in the family business, you don't have to worry about it as much. There's no worries at all. You already have all your business paid for. And the thing you got to really look out for, though, is you got to put your stuff in a trust, a LLC. You got to put your stuff where nobody can sue you and nobody can divorce you. They get a few dollars. Like you effectively own nothing. By the way, this is what the rich do to keep people from taking away their money. This is how people have legacy wealth multiple generations. They don't allow the frivolousness of the youth where basically like you were young, you were horny, and it seemed like hopefully the marriage would work out, but then one of you gets bored or one of you cheats or something, whatever. Usually it's 85% of the time, or let's just be, I'll be generous, 80% of the time, it's women deciding to file for divorce. And some of them think they're going to get a payday. See, that's what you got to be looking out for. And by the way, a lot of you, no offense, a lot of you are fucking losers, just because you choose to be losers. So this does not apply to you. Like, you know, the joke of a broke divorce. Well, how do you divide zero? You know, it's like the joke where she's like, well, I'll take the house. I'll take it. Honey, we don't even own this house. The bank owns this house. You want to take half this mortgage? Oh, fuck, you can have the whole mortgage. You know? So what's the point of that? When you actually go out and do something incredible for yourself before you take on the family business, before you start anything. And by the way, the argument sometimes would be, unless you really love what the family business is, you shouldn't take it on. You shouldn't take it on for any sort of like, well, the family, the legacy. By the way, don't take on what everybody else will throw away unless you love doing it. And what do I mean by that? If the rest of your siblings, it should be made very, very well spelt out in the will that the fact that they walked away means they don't get these assets. The person who's keeping this fucking shit going should be the one getting it. Because otherwise, it's like, why the hell should you maintain something that some other people will come back after they went out and did whatever with their lives? And you actually went out and did the right thing, you know, retirement by 30, aka 7 to 10 years. You did the right thing to where you're set up. You don't have to worry about the money. Meanwhile, they took off and then you were left holding the bag. Now, let me tell you something. That weight that a lot of people have, that kind of family guilt, we can't let the family business go under. At the very least, you should love what you're doing. And you'll love it a whole lot more if you've already got your retirement completely fully funded before you take it over. And if you already outright own your house, that way, if you have a good year, it's even better. If you have a bad year, you're not worried at all. You just didn't do as good as the year before. But that's the thing about it. I see a lot of people that through family guilt and legacy, they'll end up taking on a burden that pretty much consumes their life. And you want to talk about some bitter people. When the businesses go under, oh yeah, I've seen a lot of people where my daddy did this for the business and we did it for the business. And then one day the government did this or that. And then we were slowly losing the logging business, or we lost the trucking business, or the family farm, or basically the world changed and you just didn't have enough money for a few years and then suddenly you're out of business. There ain't nothing worse than that, because then it feels like people have wasted. It's like a bad marriage. It really is. It's like a bad marriage where after, spending 20 years of your life invested in people, family, and all this, somebody just decides, oops, we're walking away. That's also why I think if you want to bring back marriage to some degree, because it's not really a solid thing like it used to be, you need to start bringing back better protection for assets. It shouldn't be something that only the rich people do. And by the way, I actually saw poor people doing this. I remember one of my buddies when I was a garbage man. He he had a big travel trailer on his property. He didn't build a house. He didn't do any of that. And he's like, hey, if they want to be with me, they can be with me how I live. And it turned out he'd been married and divorced a couple times before. And they're like, he never lost his land. And you know why he never lost his land? Because the grandparents, his parents, they owned the property. And the kids would only get their sections of property after the parents died. And the reason for that was, if you're living on your parents' property, when she divorces you, she can't take the land or the house. She can't take the house that you don't own. That's legacy wealth right there. So basically, I don't know. To me, I understand the heart and soul of why a lot of people want to, take on the family mantle. But if you don't have a solid economic plan before you get into it, you might be setting yourself up to a lot of heartbreak and failure. That's why I often say retirement by 30 in America, or 7 to 10 years, depending on whenever you start. Live as cheap as possible, absolutely cheap. I mean, fuck, I gave you the numbers earlier, and then basically go out there and kick ass. But I understand what I'm saying is advanced thinking, even though it's pretty fucking common thinking, to be honest. It's common sense. Invest when you're young, let your money make. Basically, Hey, if you think what I think's crazy, go look at how the Nords got rich. It wasn't the oil that made the Nordic people rich. It was their investment worldwide. They took the money and they invested it worldwide. And the same thing goes for any country that's doing that. You don't get rich by selling off your hard work and resources. You get rich by investing. Like, so everybody's looking for a gold mine, and I'll tell you what that gold mine is. You know, basically, the gold mine is your labor and your investing. Gold mine isn't the gold itself. It's your labor and your savings. You save, you invest. There's your gold mine. That's the modern gold mine. That's your winning lottery ticket that everybody can go out there and pick up off the ground. But if you're not willing to do anything, okay, then just accept your fate for as it is and live happily. Like, I got buddies back out on the West Coast. At least 5 friends that faked crazy. One guy, the crown jewel, thought he was God, took acid, retired at 18, gets a little Section 8 apartment, little sliver apartment. Another guy lives in a trailer back in the day. I don't know if he still lives there, next to his dad's diesel shop. And he faked crazy at 30. Gets $1,000 a month. And you know what? I'm going to tell you, those guys are happy. So if your retirement by 30 is beyond your ability, just because you're too lazy, then just find a way to be comfortable and happy. But I don't know. There's still, as weird as America is, there's so much opportunity in this country. I just think most people, they don't do anything with it. So anyhow, just good recording. I'll stick with this and I'll upload this. Anyhow, let's see. Let's read a couple comments. Yeah, 7%, 7% here. Return. That's pretty low return, to be honest. When I say 10%, I got a relative who's doing way better in the market than that, but he's a smart kid, So let's see. Let's see. What do? You think about hiring a CEO? I don't know. That's interesting. I'd have to really think about that question. So let mommy and daddy manage. Basically, what it is that you make sure that you don't technically, if you're going to be married, you can't technically own things. That's just it. That's the way to answer that question. If it's not about mommy and daddy so much as it's about you not owning things, so things can't be taken from you in divorce or a lawsuit. Like, that's it right there. That's how businesses stay rich. They basically make it to where the liability doesn't fall on them directly. That's the key thing that a lot of people don't understand. When you fuck up and you fail because you're set up as a normal person, well, then the liability falls on you. So anyhow, I've said my piece on this. I'm going to upload this as a recording. Who knows? Maybe I'll talk about some other topics today. Peace.